Hey everybody, welcome to the 4th episode of Chaos Around the World. Okay, let's get right to it. We'll talk about migration real quick because it is the #1 problem in my book. I don't rank these. According to any kind of scientific or statistical knowledge that I might have, but I just see that migration around the world is probably the biggest threat, at least to the West, and to stability and civilization on the planet here. So let's take a look. You got North Africa. There's a lot of migrants crossing the sea there and landed on the shores of Italy and Spain and places like that. And also they're coming across from West Asia. So you got that. That's really causing problems for Europe. It's bringing the EU dreams of global dictatorship to their knees, it looks like. They're having a real problem with the populace not really digging the whole gigantic influx of people who hate them. It's pretty much how it is. People who don't want to get along with them, don't want to go by the rules that already exist there, want to force everybody to live by their rules. In America, we have some of that, but mostly our problem is migrants crossing our border illegally and undeclared and living under false identities and just basically wreaking havoc for the American people. There is a lot of crime amongst them if you're willing to take such a risk as to travel to the border and then cross it illegally. Chances are you'd be willing to take risks committing other crimes. So that's my calculus there. There's probably not the best and brightest of the South American people coming across our border in the first place. And with the migration also comes trafficking of various different types of humans, drugs, weapons, children. So there's a lot of things to be worried about there with the global migration, because a lot of it can be the movement of military-age men into a position of strategy. For instance, if they were to move millions of people into Mexico that were all, and they were all stacked up nearby our border, we have some kind of reason for concern, right? So that is a way to move people around and not really get the kind of attention you would get by moving a military force around. But in the end, it transforms into a military force. So global migration is a threat to security and stability and to the demographics and the culture of every country that is, hit with a massive influx of migrants all at once. Most countries can take a few at a time, but not that many to where they build enclaves inside your country. So that's the #1 on the list. The next big threat that I'll go over is politics. The bad side of it, the Marxism, the globalism, the communism, a lot of isms. And so what you got with this cultural Marxism is you got a bunch of people like Antifa or third wave feminists or Black Lives Matter. You see, they're wound up and shot out there into the public to do the bidding of people that have an agenda. The people doing this on the streets don't necessarily know what that agenda is, other than to oppose whoever the bad guy is. This time it's Trump, a threat to the globalists' agenda. And so they send them out onto the streets to protest against, all the Trump supporters try to put the kibosh on the whole nationalist Trump type movement all over the earth that's happening. So, cultural Marxism is what they've used to bring down, communism or any kind of government that they don't want. It starts with just civil unrest. They cause trouble. They're provocateurs. And they find very willing and able idiots, for lack of a better word, to do their bidding and cause the trouble that they want caused, because it's called order out of chaos. That is why I named this series The World in Chaos. Chaos around the world. Because they try to get order out of chaos. Because people will beg for that order when the chaos ensues. So it gives them the power to do it. See, they create the chaos, you demand the order that they already had whipped up to not be in your best interest. So that's what's going on there. And this is a New World Order agenda. This is like globalism on steroids that's going on right now. The UN has been planning to take over the whole world like it's not some kind of pinky in the brain, tinfoil hat conspiracy. Everybody knows from the white papers that they've written over the years and their charter, their agenda, everything they do is about them being in charge and everybody else bowing down to them. And they want to push it to a point to where all governments give up their national sovereignty and the sovereignty of their voters, their constituents, to pick their own government and have their government represent them. And have it be more of a bottom-up instead of top-down from the UN unelected bureaucrats telling your government what to do. I know I don't want my elected officials that I voted for to bow down to the agenda of an unelected bureaucrat that's not even an American in most cases. So there's that. The New World Order, that's what they want. They want to break down all sovereignty, all borders, and just have the UN in control of it. Take over all military force and at least dole it out as they see fit. All military force will be at the behest and on behalf of the UN in the future. So I think that's a big threat, you know, that's why it is number 2 on my list of, you know, most catastrophic type of problems that we face that cause a lot of the chaos, because it is the politics that do it. So there's number 2. Okay, number 3 is a big one. It's disease and famine across the globe. That's a very big issue. What we have is a situation where certain countries don't provide for themselves as far as infrastructure and productivity to see to it that they survive. They rely on the rest of the world and aid and stuff like that. So, you know, you can pretty much guess which countries are suffering from famine. You know, most of West Africa, North Korea, Singapore, you know, all of that. And it's sad. But that's what's going on there with the famine. And with famine and starvation comes disease. And we do have a lot of disease going on for sure. DR Congo, they have up to date 1,600 cases of Ebola, 1,000 fatalities from Ebola, and it's spreading. So there's that. It's amazing it hasn't reached outside their borders. So that is a huge, huge crisis. We just had a kid die down in a Texas immigration holding facility. He was diagnosed as having flu-like symptoms, but then he was dead within 24 hours. I believe is the story. That's the gist of it. He just died. But I do know from a lot of anecdotal stories and some of the cases in the news that there is a lot of other diseases down there. There's tuberculosis, there's some meningitis going on in there, there's herpes, there's a lot of, hepatitis, did I say that already? But yeah, there's that. So it's really bad, and that's people that are trying to get into our country. And these are highly infectious, contagious diseases in a country full of people that aren't exactly in the best shape. So there's that. There's a lot of starvation, and there is a lot of lot of disease. And what the starvation does, well, we're seeing it. It creates destitution and poverty and disease, and people run from it. So you can't hardly entirely blame the individuals who flee. You got to blame the people with the agenda that created the conditions to intentionally cause them to flee. That's what's going on here. Okay? So let's get that straight. It's not like people don't know what kills crops and animals. So let's not kid ourselves. There's global food crisis coming up. It's coming. We just had some hard weather hit and delay our growing season here in the Midwest. Yeah, they still haven't planted some of the corn. You might not know that. Yeah, we'll be okay. But the bottom of the totem pole gets chopped out of the deal. That's just how it works. And those people become destitute, and they end up with no option better than trying to flee to a better place like America. And we go back to the last subject, migration. This all ties together. And we'll move on. Okay, this subject is war and violence. This comes up number 4 on the list. There's a lot of war and violence going on right now. First, we can talk about interior violence in countries based on civil uprisings, clashes between religions and races, political parties. Does that sound familiar? Without discussing details that get censored. We all know that there's interior struggles in countries all over the world, right? Especially all the Western ones. Maybe there's a struggle between nationalism and globalism. In fact, I know there is, and nationalism's winning, so there's that. But there's a lot of violence involved. People getting hit over the head with bike locks. People throwing bricks, like we saw the other day with Tommy Robinson. There's a lot of civil unrest violence. I think that could lead to not a World War III, but a widespread, almost global, country-by-country civil war. Yeah, and I do see other powers licking their chops waiting for that kind of chaos to come along so that they can come and install their prescription of order. You don't want that. You don't want that at all. That's what they got up their sleeve with all this civil unrest nonsense. Order out of chaos. So let's go on to country to country cross-border conflicts. Wow, there's a lot of them, a lot of skirmishes, and some real big factions inside countries. Like I looked at an interactive map and all of West Africa was lit up. You know, Syria, Yemen. There's a lot of places that have real heavy fighting. I'm talking 10,000 people in the last year being killed in the wars. And then on the lower level, 5,000 or 1,000, there's hundreds more conflicts you never even hear about. Or just a few people get killed every day, and it adds up to hundreds, a few thousand every year. And the skirmishes continue. So there is a lot of like military-style conflict rather than bike locks and bricks. But it all kind of leads to the same global crisis we could be heading towards. Just like on a collision course with destiny, with all of these different things that are going on all at once that seem to be coming to a head and to an apex at the same spot in our history. So we'll look forward to that. So war, number 4 on the list. And number 5 is an easy one. It's the collapse of the oceans and the food chain in general. We start with Fukushima. You know, Fukushima has already dumped enough nuclear waste, nuclear material into the ocean to cause the end of all life on Earth. The reason we're all still here is because of dispersion. It would have to be dispersed through ocean currents and weather currents, and it is. It certainly is. But very slowly. But I'm telling you, if you took all the material that has been spilled from Fukushima since that tsunami hit them, and you spread it around this earth evenly, all life would cease to exist within 10 years. It's that simple. And since it has such a long half-life, the stuff we're talking about, plutonium-based, has a very long 1,000-year half-life or some crazy thing like that. So there is time to disperse it around the whole planet, and it will happen. We're not doing anything to stop it. We're not doing anything to stop adding to it. So there's that. What's happening in the ocean while it's there now is it's killing off a lot of the plankton. You see, because nuclear material is bioaccumulative, which means that when a fish or an animal or even us eats it, we will digest the food around it, but not the nuclear material itself. That stays. Everything we eat that has nuclear material, the food gets digested, the material stays. That's why it's important to have nascent iodine in your system to help block that, because the iodine tablets is what they used and still use to protect people from radiation. It gets in your thyroid and blocks the radiation from going in there and parking. It helps your body get it out. But there's that. It bioaccumulates. By the time there's a big fish that ate hundreds of little fish up the food chain, there's a lot of radiation. People that eat big salmon and tuna and swordfish out of the ocean, they probably shouldn't. You probably shouldn't. I'll tell you that right now. But even up here on dry land, what we got is Monsanto and the biofuel corn. Well, they decided to come up with the genius idea to genetically splice the Monsanto product with the corn so that the corn would grow to kill bugs. It was great because it's just biofuel. It doesn't have to be approved by the FDA. But here's the problem. It's the pollen. The pollen blows. It gets carried by bees into the next field that is for food. And then the next generation of that crop is contaminated and ruined. See how that's going? In India, they're killing themselves because Monsanto's killing their farm. Another story, another video entirely. But yeah, that's the global food crisis. It's going on. And it ranks pretty high. Like I said, I don't have any scientific data to rank these, what's a bigger threat and what's not, but I think this is a pretty big one. There is a point where we can't reverse it. So, there's that. Well, my last subject is the space, sun, asteroids, that kind of stuff. Let's start with the sun. Well, the sun has these things called sunspots, and they eject these things we call coronal mass ejections. It's like plasma coming at us. It's a highly charged particles that come at us. And what happens is our magnetosphere that goes around the Earth, it projects outward from our poles, because our Earth is like static electricity. It builds up this electromagnetic shield that when this plasma comes in from the sun, it goes around it, okay? Well, there's this machine. It's the biggest machine on Earth, most expensive machine on Earth, and the most high-tech machine on Earth. It smashes atoms together. It's called CERN. Yes, it's on the border of France and Switzerland. What it does is it smashes atoms together at such a high rate of speed that they think they might be causing a rip in the space-time continuum, opening a portal to hell. who knows what they're doing with all of this stuff, right? They're looking for the Higgs boson particle, you know, they talked about in the Big Bang Theory a lot. So what happens when they turn this machine on is the most power consuming machine ever built. Also, it takes the like 13 teravolts, which is trillion volts. Like, so they turn this on and it affects our magnetosphere that protects the Earth from the sun blasting us with plasma from a coronal mass ejection. And what CERN does is it weakens and destabilizes that electromagnetic shield. Sometimes it breaks open, flips around and comes back. And you can watch that in real time, the live feed of the magnetosphere and them turning on that machine. The chaos coincides with the magnetosphere. So there's that. Some of the things I worry about going on at CERN, probably shouldn't even talk about here. We got those scientists out there in the middle of the night dressed like druids dancing around and having some kind of a weird ritual in front of a statue of an 8-armed god. Shiva, the god of destruction. The destroyer. So you tell me, is the world in chaos? Is it an accident? Or is somebody looking for a little order out of chaos? Maybe a little both.